Welcome back to the show. Today we are diving into a phenomenon that I think is becoming an epidemic in the digital age. We call it the quick fix trap, or more accurately, micro-leakage. It is that slow, silent drain of capital where small, seemingly insignificant monthly charges aggregate into a massive financial hole. Joining me today is Ishan Malhotra, a freelance app developer based in Bandra. Ishan, you are someone who lives and breathes optimization, which makes your story particularly fascinating. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Sanchit. And yeah, the irony is not lost on me. I spend my entire professional life optimizing code for efficiency, trying to shave off milliseconds of latency for my clients, and yet my own bank account was basically a sieve for 2 years. It is a bit embarrassing to admit, really.
Well, that is why we are here. Let's start with the discovery phase. You didn't wake up one morning and suddenly realize you were missing lakhs of rupees. Usually micro-leakage is invisible until it hits a critical mass. When did the veil finally lift for you?
It was actually a Tuesday afternoon. I was trying to move some money into a high-yield savings account to bolster my emergency fund, which looking back I thought was healthy. I went to transfer a specific amount and the app gave me a low balance warning. I stared at the screen for a good 10 seconds. I remember thinking that is impossible. I have a steady stream of freelance contracts. I do not spend wildly. I do not buy luxury cars or expensive watches. But the number on the screen just did not add up to the math in my head.
That is a jarring moment. When you finally opened the statement, what did you see? Because for most people it is not one big transaction, it is 1,000 tiny cuts.
Exactly. It was a sea of small numbers. There were these charges for 400 rupees here, 199 there. I had 3 different cloud storage tiers because I was terrified of losing data. I had premium subscriptions for productivity apps, things like Notion add-ons, specialized API monitors, a few niche newsletters about AI that I read maybe once a month. And then the lifestyle stuff, streaming services, a gym membership in Bandra that I had not visited since the monsoon of 2022, and even a couple of premium dating apps I had forgotten to cancel.
It sounds like you were building a digital ecosystem around yourself. In your mind at the time, were these expenses viewed as costs or were they investments in your productivity?
Oh, absolutely, investments. That was the trap. I told myself, look, if this tool saves me 10 minutes a week, it is paying for itself. I was optimizing my workflow. I thought I was being a high-performance professional by having the best toolkit available. I didn't see it as spending money. I saw it as buying efficiency. It is a very dangerous headspace to be in because you stop looking at the total and start looking at the individual utility of each single app.
Let's move into the audit. This is where the math gets brutal. You realized you had a debt of 1,42,000 rupees with an interest rate of 14%. When you sat down to actually tally up these micro leaks over 2 years, what did the total monthly drain look like?
It was horrifying. When I actually sat down with a spreadsheet, which again is my comfort zone, I realized I was leaking nearly 8 to 10,000 rupees every single month, just in subscriptions for 2 years. When you multiply that out, it is a staggering amount of money that simply vanished. It was not spent on a vacation or a piece of furniture. It was spent on digital permissions to use software I didn't even remember installing.
That is the psychological horror of micro-leakage. It is the absence of a purchase event. You don't feel the pain of paying because it happens automatically in the background. But now you are facing a debt of 1.42 lakhs. At 14% APR, you are paying about 1,650 rupees in interest every month just to keep that debt alive. Does that interest figure feel like another subscription to you?
It feels like a penalty tax for my own arrogance. That 1650 is basically the cost of 2 or 3 of those useless apps I was paying for. So now I am paying interest on money I spent on tools I didn't use. It is a recursive loop of failure. It is actually quite depressing when you lay it out like that.
I want to push on something here, Ishan. You are a developer. You are analytical. You deal with data for a living. Why did you not just check your bank statement once a month? Why let this go on for 2 years?
Look, I am a researcher. I am always in the middle of some deep work sprint. I thought I was optimizing my productivity tools, and in my head, the cost was negligible. Who cares about 200 rupees? It is a coffee and a snack in Bandra. I felt that if I spent too much time auditing my pennies, I was wasting the very time I was trying to optimize. I thought I was being efficient by ignoring the small stuff to focus on the big picture.
So the defense mechanism was that auditing the money was a waste of intellectual energy?
Exactly. I convinced myself that my time was too valuable to spend on a bank statement. It was a classic case of intellectual superiority. I thought I was too smart to fall for a basic budgeting error. But the reality is I was just lazy and delusional.
That transition from intellectual superiority to the realization of the loss is usually where the breaking point happens. When did the panic actually set in for you? Was it the debt total or the realization of the waste?
It was the moment I looked at my emergency fund. I had this mental image of a safety net, a cushion that would allow me to take risks with my freelance career. But when I saw the actual balance, I realized the micro-leakage had eroded it. I wasn't just in debt, I was vulnerable. The panic hit me when I realized that if a major client had dropped me a month prior, I would have been completely wiped out. I was living on a digital facade of success while my actual foundation was rotting.
I can hear the stress in your voice when you talk about that. It is a feeling of exposure. You went from feeling like a high-performance optimizer to feeling like you had been robbed even though you were the one who signed up for the services.
It is a very specific kind of shame. It is not the shame of a gambling addiction or a shopping spree. It is the shame of being an expert in a field and failing at the most basic level of personal administration. I felt like a fraud. I was building apps for other people to manage their lives, while my own financial life was a chaotic mess of auto debits.
Let's talk about the recovery plan. You have 1,42,000 in debt. The interest is eating 1,650 rupees a month. Given your freelance income, how are you tackling this? Are you doing a scorched earth policy on your subscriptions?
Oh, absolutely. I went full minimalist. I spent an entire weekend doing what I call the Great Purge. I cancelled everything. Every single thing. I didn't even ask if I might need it later. If it wasn't essential for my core business operations, it was gone. I felt this incredible rush of clarity. It was like cleaning a room that had been cluttered for years. I discovered I had a subscription to a premium fitness app that I hadn't opened in 18 months. I was paying for a digital coach to tell me to do squats while I was sitting on my couch eating chips.
That is the emotional release of the audit. But the debt remains. How are you allocating your current cash flow to kill that 14% APR monster?
I have shifted to a strict zero-based budget. Every rupee is assigned a job. I am taking the 10,000 rupees that used to leak out of my account and throwing it directly at the principal of the debt. I am not allowing myself any luxury subscriptions until that balance is zero. I have switched to free open source alternatives for almost everything. I am rediscovering the joy of using a simple text editor instead of a fancy paid IDE with 100 plugins.
You mentioned the joy of simplicity. Do you think this experience has changed your philosophy on productivity? Because you started this journey trying to optimize your way to success through tools, but you found success through subtraction.
It has completely flipped my perspective. I used to think that more tools equaled more power. Now I realize that every tool is a potential distraction and a potential leak. True optimization is not about adding the right plugin. It is about removing the unnecessary noise. I am learning that a minimalist financial lifestyle is actually the ultimate productivity hack, because it removes the background anxiety of wondering where the money is going.
Let's look at the math for a second. If you continue to put 10,000 rupees a month toward that debt, you are not just paying the 1,650 in interest, you are aggressively attacking the principal. You will clear this in about 15 to 16 months. How does that timeline feel compared to the 2 years you spent leaking the money?
It feels like a redemption arc. The fact that I can kill the debt in roughly the same time it took to create it gives me a sense of control. But it also serves as a reminder of how much time I wasted. Those 2 years were a lesson in blind spots. I was so focused on the horizon that I didn't see the holes in my own shoes.
For the people listening who might be in their own version of the subscription sinkhole, maybe they aren't developers in Mumbai, but they have the same micro leaks. What is the first step they should take? Is it the spreadsheet or is it something more psychological?
Start with the statement. Not the app, not the summary, but the actual detailed bank statement from the last 3 months. Search for the word subscription or recurring. You will find things you forgot existed. And the most important part is to stop justifying the small cost. Stop saying it is only 200 rupees. Start asking why you are paying for something you do not use daily. The moment you stop the leakage, you stop the panic.
It is about shifting from the mindset of a consumer of tools to a curator of resources.
Exactly. Be a curator, not a collector. I spent years collecting digital tools and all I got was a debt of 1.4 lakhs and a lot of stress.
I want to go back to that trigger point. When you first realized the emergency fund was gone, you mentioned feeling vulnerable. Do you think that vulnerability is actually a catalyst for the discipline you have now?
Definitely. Comfort is the enemy of awareness. As long as I thought I had a cushion, I didn't care about the leaks. It was only when the cushion vanished that I was forced to look at the floor and see where the water was coming from. That fear was the only thing that could break through my intellectual denial. I needed to feel the cold air of financial instability to actually change my behavior.
That is a profound realization. The crisis became the cure.
It really did. I actually feel more secure now with a debt and a strict budget than I did when I thought I was wealthy and optimized. There is a certain peace that comes with knowing exactly where every single paisa is going.
Let's talk about the freelance aspect. Being a freelancer in a city like Mumbai, there is a lot of pressure to look the part, the right gear, the right subscriptions, the right image. Did that play a role in your over-optimization?
Huge role. In the Bandra tech circle, there is this unspoken competition about who has the most cutting-edge setup. If you are not using the latest AI-powered project management tool or the most expensive cloud suite, you feel like you're falling behind. I was paying for a status symbol that only existed in my browser tabs. It was a digital version of buying a fancy car you cannot afford.
So it was a performance of productivity.
Precisely. I was performing the role of a high-end developer. But the irony is my actual output didn't increase because I had more tools. My code didn't get better because I had a premium subscription to a newsletter. I was just paying for the feeling of being the kind of person who uses those tools.
That is such a common trap in the knowledge economy. We confuse the tools of the trade with the skill of the trade.
Yes. And the cost of that confusion is exactly what I'm paying off now. I am literally paying interest on my own vanity.
As you move forward, how do you prevent the creep? Because the temptation to sign up for just one more tool, just one more helpful app will inevitably return. How do you build a firewall against micro-leakage?
I have implemented a rule called the 24-hour cooling period. If I see a tool that I think will optimize my life, I am not allowed to subscribe immediately. I have to wait 24 hours and write down exactly how it will save me more money than it costs. If I cannot prove the ROI in writing, I don't get the subscription.
That is a very analytical approach. You are applying the same rigor to your spending that you apply to your code.
It is the only way I can trust myself. I have proven that my intuition about small amounts of money is completely broken. I need a system, not a feeling.
Let's look at the emotional arc here. You started this journey with a bit of a shield, feeling like a researcher who was simply optimizing. You hit a wall of panic, and now you are in this place of disciplined minimalism. Do you feel like the person you were before the debt is different from the person you are now?
I feel humbler. I think the intellectual superiority I had was actually a form of blindness. I thought I had the world figured out because I understood complex algorithms, but I didn't understand the most basic algorithm of all: income minus expenses equals savings. I had to be humbled by a few hundred rupee charges to realize that I was not as smart as I thought I was.
There is a lot of power in that humility. It allows for actual growth.
It really does. I think I'm actually a better developer now because I am more focused. I spend less time tweaking my tools and more time actually writing the code. The subtraction of the tools led to an addition of focus.
I love that phrasing, subtraction leading to addition. Now, if we look at the remaining debt, you are still paying that 1,650 in interest monthly. Does that still frustrate you, or do you see it as a tuition fee for this life lesson?
I've decided to view it as a tuition fee. If I look at it as a loss, I get angry. If I look at it as the cost of a very expensive course in financial literacy, it becomes easier to handle. I paid 1.4 lakhs to learn how to manage my money. In the long run, that is a bargain.
That is a very healthy psychological pivot. It turns a liability into an asset of knowledge.
It has to be that way. Otherwise, I would just be spiraling in guilt. And guilt is not a productive state for anyone.
Before we wrap up, for anyone who is currently feeling that panic, that moment where they realize their emergency fund is gone and the subscriptions have won, what is the most important thing to remember?
Remember that it is fixable. It feels like a catastrophe because it is a slow leak, but the moment you plug the holes, the bleeding stops. You are not a failure. You just fell for a very well-designed psychological trap. The systems are built to make you forget you are paying. The win is in remembering.
The win is in the awareness. Ishan, this has been an incredible deep dive. I think your story highlights the danger of the digital age, how we can be optimized into poverty if we aren't careful.
Thank you for having me, Sanchit. It was actually quite therapeutic to lay this all out.
I am glad to hear that. To everyone listening, go check your statements, find your leaks, plug them, and remember the best tool for your financial life is often the one you choose not to buy.
Well said, truly.